Potential PR cuts on the horizon. Canada's bold response to economic uncertainty and rising unemployment. Welcome back to Canada Chronicles. In today's video, we're diving into a major shift in Canada's immigration strategy. With rising unemployment, a national housing crisis, and inflation squeezing budgets, the government is reconsidering its ambitious plans to bring in 500,000 permanent residents by 2025. Could this mean fewer PR opportunities ahead? We'll explore what's driving these potential cuts and, more importantly, what this could mean for Canada's future. But that's not all. Temporary residents have become a major focus of Canada's immigration policies, and there's a lot to unpack there. We'll be covering this in detail later in the video, so make sure you stay tuned until the end. You won't want to miss how this shift might reshape the immigration landscape for students, workers, and temporary residents hoping to stay longer. Before we get into all of that, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on Canada's evolving immigration policies. Let's get started. Canada, known for its welcoming immigration stance, is now at a crossroads. For years, the country's immigration policy has been a crucial part of its economic strategy, helping to fill labor gaps and counterbalance its aging population. But as of October 2024, the future of this policy is under intense scrutiny. Rising unemployment, inflation, and a national housing crisis are forcing policymakers to reconsider the ambitious targets for the next few years. At the heart of these discussions is Mark Miller, Canada's Minister of Immigration, who recently indicated that the country is considering lowering its PR targets for 2025. The original target of 500,000 new PRs annually was set to fuel economic growth and contribute to long-term prosperity. However, the economic landscape has shifted, and now the government's priorities are following suit. What's driving the reassessment? Canada has been navigating a turbulent economic recovery since the pandemic. While sectors like technology and healthcare still face critical labor shortages, others like accommodation, hospitality, and transportation are seeing a downturn. Rising unemployment in these industries is one of the primary factors behind the government's reconsideration of PR targets. Inflation, particularly in the housing market, has further exacerbated these challenges. Toronto and Vancouver, two of Canada's largest cities, have seen housing costs soar to levels unaffordable for many. This has sparked public outcry, with many Canadians believing that current immigration levels are worsening the housing crisis and putting additional pressure on the infrastructure. Additionally, the rising cost of goods and services is stretching household budgets across the country, driving urgent debates about whether Canada can support large numbers of new permanent residents when its infrastructure is already under strain. Canada's aging population. A need for balance. On the other side, Canada relies heavily on immigration to sustain its workforce. With birth rates declining and an increasing number of Canadians retiring, immigration is a key pillar of the country's economic strategy. Immigrants now make up more than one-third of the workforce in industries like healthcare, construction, and professional services. However, while immigration helps address labor shortages, it also adds pressure to an already strained housing market and public services. The influx of new residents increases demand for housing, schools, and healthcare services, many of which are already operating at or beyond capacity. Minister Mark Miller recognizes that the balance between a strong labor force and sustainable growth in infrastructure is crucial. Temporary residents. The new focus of Canada's immigration strategy. As the government considers reducing PR targets, there has been a notable shift in focus toward temporary residents. The rising number of international students and temporary foreign workers has become a focal point of recent immigration reforms. Temporary residents, including international students and foreign workers, often aim to transition into permanent residency, as they fill crucial roles in short-term labor markets. However, with the government introducing caps on temporary visas, this path to PR has become more competitive. Recent policy shifts have made it increasingly difficult for temporary residents to transition to permanent status. For instance, new restrictions now limit the number of international students who can move from a study permit to a work permit. Similarly, low-wage temporary workers are facing restrictions in regions where the unemployment rate exceeds 6%. This is part of a broader effort to ensure that Canada's infrastructure and public services are not overwhelmed by rapid population growth. In addition, the Global Skills Strategy, which previously fast-tracked high-skilled temporary workers to PR, has been scaled back. The government is now prioritizing domestic candidates, making it harder for foreign workers to secure long-term residency. These changes reflect the government's strategy to balance immigration with economic realities while ensuring that public services can keep pace with the growing population. Sector-specific impacts. Which industries will be affected? Healthcare, in particular, stands to be heavily affected by these changes. Immigration accounts for nearly 100% of labor market growth in Canada, and the healthcare sector is no exception. The sector relies heavily on foreign-trained professionals, and by 2028, Canada could face a shortfall of 44,000 doctors and nurses if immigration levels are not maintained. Reducing the number of permanent residents will likely worsen these shortages, placing even more strain on the healthcare system. Similarly, the hospitality and agriculture sectors, which rely heavily on temporary foreign workers, could face labor shortages during peak seasons if immigration caps and permit limits continue. Leaders in the agriculture sector estimate that the workforce might shrink by 25% during harvest periods due to fewer available foreign workers, leading to reduced productivity and higher costs. Concrete data on government actions. Current measures and implementation. In terms of temporary resident permits, the government has implemented caps on the number of international students and foreign workers allowed into the country. For example, Canada is capping international students to about 5% of the total population, part of an effort to prevent the temporary resident space from becoming unsustainable. Additionally, the government aims to limit the total number of temporary residents to 5% of the population, which is expected to help ease pressure on infrastructure and housing. Affordable housing efforts are underway, but their effectiveness remains under scrutiny. Under the National Housing Strategy, the government aims to build over 100,000 new housing units by 2028, with a focus on major urban centers like Toronto and Vancouver. While these efforts are substantial, it remains uncertain whether they will be enough to meet the growing demand. Solutions to address economic and social challenges. As the government weighs its options, it is also considering long-term solutions to the economic and social challenges driving these discussions. One of the most pressing issues remains the housing crisis. Without sufficient affordable housing, it will be difficult to justify continuing high levels of immigration. While investments in housing are ongoing, more needs to be done to ensure that both newcomers and long-term residents have access to affordable housing. Another potential solution is to create more targeted immigration programs that focus on specific sectors with the greatest labor shortages, such as healthcare, technology, and construction. By prioritizing these sectors, Canada can continue benefiting from immigration while reducing the strain on housing and public services. The government could also consider public-private partnerships to build affordable housing more rapidly and meet the demands of a growing population. This approach, combined with targeted immigration programs, could help alleviate housing shortages and better manage population growth. Striking a balance. Canada's immigration future. Canada's immigration system is at a turning point. The country's reliance on immigration to support its economy must be balanced with the need to ensure its infrastructure can keep up with population growth. Minister Mark Miller has emphasized that the government's decision on whether to cut PR targets will be driven by economic realities and the need to ensure immigrants can be successfully integrated into Canadian society. While some worry that cutting PR targets could slow economic growth, others argue that reducing immigration may provide the breathing room needed to address housing shortages and public service capacity. As we await the government's final decision in November 2024, one thing is clear: Canada's immigration policy is evolving to meet the challenges of the 21st century. As you can see, Canada's immigration strategy is undergoing a significant transformation. Rising unemployment, economic uncertainty, and a national housing crisis are prompting the government to reconsider its PR targets. While immigration remains essential, the increasing focus on temporary residents reflects Canada's need to adapt. These changes could impact those seeking to make Canada their long-term home, as well as those currently on temporary visas. Thanks for watching today's deep dive into Canada's potential PR cuts and the increasing role of temporary residents in the immigration system. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll always stay updated with the latest changes in Canadian immigration. Have any thoughts or questions? Drop them in the comments below, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, thanks for tuning into Canada Chronicles, and we'll see you in the next video.